Hello, hi everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Sylvia, Merchant Success Specialist here at PrestaShop, and welcome to this new webinar. Just as a reminder, this is the e-commerce week organized by PrestaShop together with our partners, so PayPal, Criteo, and Peak Digital. Thank you so much for supporting this event. I think it's the time to start with today's webinar. We're going to talk about PrestaShop, and to do so, we invited one of our experts, so Pablo Borovic. Thank you, Pablo, for being here. It's a pleasure. Pablo is going to tell us something about PrestaShop. He's the Core Development Manager here at PrestaShop. The title of the webinar is PrestaShop 1.7.8 and beyond, so we cannot wait any longer to listen to your presentation. To all the attendees, please don't forget to type all your questions. At the end of the presentation, there's going to be a Q&A session, so Pablo is going to answer to all your questions. Great, I think that's all, and I'm not wasting time, so Pablo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sylvia. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a nice afternoon or a nice morning if you're on the other side of the world. And today I'm going to talk about the future of PrestaShop. So I'm going to talk about 1.7.8 and beyond. I'm not sure if you're seeing my screen, so see if you could just put up my screen. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the future of PrestaShop today. If you don't know me, that's me. I'm the Core Development Manager at PrestaShop. My job is to oversee the development of the open source project named after this company, which is called PrestaShop. So let's get started. So today I'm going to speak about the state of PrestaShop in 2020. Next up is the state of PrestaShop 1.7 and the things that we are going to do for 1.7 in the future. And in the end, I'm going to talk about what's next after PrestaShop 1.7. So let's get started. So the state of PrestaShop in 2020, where are we? Let's start with a reminder of the business model of the PrestaShop company. So we are contributors to an open source project, which is meant for developers, designers, integrators, agencies, freelance people, etc., which is composed of the main PrestaShop project that you are aware of, a bunch of modules that we call mainly the native modules, and themes, in particular the classic theme, which is the one that is bundled with PrestaShop. So this is what we do. And then there's a bunch of products and services which are meant for merchants and agencies. And those are things that we sell. So one of our revenue streams, probably the main one, is the marketplace, where we sell modules, themes, and services which are built by the PrestaShop company and partners, for example, or other people that we call contributors, who sell their own projects through the marketplace. Then there's training and support. And finally, there's partnerships and events. So it's very, very important to know the difference between the open source project, which is open, and which we are the main contributors, and the products and services which belong to the PrestaShop company, and they are commercial products. So a project and products and services. But today I'm going to be speaking mostly about the open source project. So let's start with the upcoming PrestaShop 1.7.7. We are only weeks away from the release candidate for this version, and it's our biggest one yet. As of last week, we were at 1,130 pull requests merged, which is a staggering 50% more than in 1.7.6 final. So it's twice as big as 1.7.6 already, and it's more than 2.5 times as many pull requests as in 1.7.5. So as you can see, the growth of each subsequent version is very, very important. And not only in terms of pull requests, also in terms of contributors, people who contributed code to this version. So for 177, as of last week, we were also at more than 114 people who contributed code, which is of which 70% belong to the community. That means that only less than a third of people who worked on this project belong to the PrestaShop company. And of these 100 and so people, 62 people are what we call returning contributors. So people that contributed to a previous version of PrestaShop, and they contributed again in 177, which is a third more than in 176. And this is a good thing because it means that people who contribute and keep contributing are accumulating experience, and their contributions forcibly become better. And so contributions globally become of higher quality than if it's just one-shot contribution and they never come back. So most people are getting back to the project, and that's a good thing. So as I said, it's our biggest release yet in terms of contributions. You can see the graph here, and you can see that it's growing steadily version after version since 172. And yeah, so PrestaShop 177 is 50% more pull requests than in 176, is 150% more than 175, and 340% more than 174. And 178 is not really right now in active development, but we are merging PRs from the community mostly, and also from our developers. And already, even if we are not yet focusing all our efforts in it yet, it's still bigger than 174 right now. So we can expect another big release when it's done. Also, as I said before, more people are contributing on each version. As you can see, the number of people contributing code is growing steadily version after version. 178, you see there's already 75 people who contributed. So we can expect this to keep growing for 178 as well. But the thing is that even though the number of people contributing is growing, you can observe a certain trend in terms of contributors, for example, on the left. So people who, the number of people who contribute to PrestaShop, and the number of contributions sent to PrestaShop. So in terms of contributors, you can see that the blue part are people who belong to the community, and they take the most part. So most contributors come from the community and not from PrestaShop. And this has been pretty much stable over the time, even though the share of community contributors is growing, which is a good thing. The thing is that in terms of contributions, so in code, most of what is done in PrestaShop is made by people from the PrestaShop company. Also, you can see that it's pretty much a stable trend, which only gets significantly better in 178, and I hope it's going to stay that way, but I don't think so because we are not yet focusing on it. But what I've been seeing and worries me a little bit is that 80% of all contributions to the project are provided by the PrestaShop company and its contractors. But even though we make 80% of the job, we only represent 20% of the people who are contributing. So we are making a bigger effort in the development of the project than the other part. And this is something that we really want to work on for many reasons, and I think that I believe that there's another webinar who is going to be held by Antoine, who is our open source advocate, and he's going to speak about our strategy in more detail. But I think that's very, very important that the share of the work done by the PrestaShop company becomes less, so smaller, but not. The idea is not to do less work, is to increase the work done by the community so that the project grows faster. So we have two objectives for 2020 in this respect. The first one is obviously to boost community contributions. So it has to do with encouraging people to contribute, but also to walk them over to help them understand what are the needs of the project in terms of quality, in terms of testing, in terms of coherence, etc. So we are working, for example, a lot on documentation, on the technical side, but also on the processes and specifying clearly what we expect in terms of how good pull requests should be done in order to make it easy to review and merge. A good PR is merged much easier and faster than a bad PR because it takes less time to review, and we can. It's probably going to take less back and forth with QA and with developers. So we want to make sure that most of the submitted contributions are good quality and can be merged. And the second one is to boost community contributions through community maintainers. So the idea is to, right now, only the PrestaShop company has rights for merging PRs in PrestaShop, and the idea is to find people who are sufficiently engaged in the project and who have the right technical background to provide them with merge rights. And this is a big responsibility. So not anyone can become a maintainer, but the first thing that we are doing is writing down exactly what we expect a maintainer to do and establishing the process to elect community maintainers and to onboard them. So this is something that we really would like to make real in 2020. So let's talk about PrestaShop 1.7 now. So most of you people are probably associating 1.7 with the Symfony migration because we've been speaking a lot about that since 2016, and you're probably right. So because up until a couple months or maybe a year, we were always saying that the objective of 1.7 was to migrate the whole back office to Symfony. And this is something that we've been working on a lot over the years. And you can see on this graph on the right, you can see for each minor version, the number of pages that we have migrated to Symfony. So at start, we went very slow. We had to set up practices and discover the pain points and to remove blockers. So we were able to accelerate. And for example, in 1.7.6, we were able to migrate 30 pages. And this was good because we were going faster. But then we started working on the more difficult parts of PrestaShop, and we started to slow down a little bit. For example, in 1.7.7, there's less migrated pages on this. We only migrated 17 pages compared to the 30 that we had migrated on the previous version. This is because the 17 pages that we migrated were harder to migrate than the others that we worked on before. So right now we are working on the difficult parts. And overall, we are past the half of the overall number of pages in the back office. There are 141 pages total, and we have already migrated 80, which represents a little more than 50%. But there's still 61 pages to go, and that's a lot. And in those 60 pages, there are very, very difficult pages to migrate. So we stopped and rethought about the scope of PrestaShop 1.7 because it's very, very difficult to migrate pages and keep and ensure a backwards compatibility. And of course, as you probably know right now, by now, we do make some breaking changes across versions when we migrate a page. We try to keep it as much as possible, but it's not always possible. And the harder the pages become, the harder it is to ensure this backwards compatibility. And it takes a very, very long time, and people are getting a little impatient. So we went back to the drawing board, and we thought about it, and we thought that it was more important to have as many pages as possible migrated, but the ones that we chose should be the most important parts. So instead of speaking about 100% migrated to Symfony, we settle for 100% of the important parts migrated to Symfony. So in 1.7, we are not going to be able to finish migrating the whole back office, but the most important parts of the back office will be migrated. But it doesn't mean that we are not going to migrate the rest. It's just that we are going to do it in the next major. So this means that to be able to migrate 100% of the important pages, we have to release at least 2 additional 1.7 minor releases in addition to 1.177, which is due to be released soon. And we hoped to be able to release it in the first part of 2020, but it's probably looking like August to me. And the most important page that we migrated in 177 was the orders page that you probably already seen on our announcements and on Colin's webinar. So 2 additional dot releases, 178, which is due early next year, in which we're going to tackle the product page and the combinations page, the discount, which is the cart rules functionality, and we are going to add UX improvements in the Multishop functionality feature. I'm going to talk about that afterwards. And what we hope is going to be the last 1.7 release in late 2021. We're going to migrate the import page and the carriers page. So 100% of the most important parts are going to be done for 179. So what's going to be 178, which is the next minor release after 177? As I said, we're going to work on the product page. We're going to work on improving the Multistore feature. We are going to add compatibility with PHP 7.4, which is the latest available release of PHP. We're going to make it possible to import and export modern module translations. And of course, we're going to continue migrating pages. We are going to continue migrating pages which are not in the 100% most important, but we are going to do it at the pace that in a slower pace probably, and as a bonus feature finally. So 5 things for 178. Let's look a little bit more in detail. So for the product page, the objective of what we're going to do in the product page is it in first to update it to current migration practices, because the product page was the first page to be migrated to Symfony, and it wasn't quite up par with what we are doing right now. There were a lot of calls to legacy code, some trade-offs that were made in order to be able to have everything in one page, which caused performance problems. So we're going to work on speeding it up, on improving page performance, in particular in what is related to product combinations. One of the big problems right now with 1.7 and that people are complaining about is that working with combinations is really slow. And the more combinations, the slower it gets. So we are going to work on improving performance when you work with combinations, so that it doesn't get slower when you add any number of combinations, and fixing some old bugs while we're at it, because this is something that we do every time we work on migrating pages. Next up is multi-store improvements. So the objectives of this improvement is to increase user context awareness, so that people can be more aware of in which multi-shop context they are. So when we speak about multi-shop context, if you don't use the multi-shop feature, you don't know what I'm talking about. And even if you heard about it, you probably don't know what I'm talking about either. But we are going to see a couple of screenshots afterwards. So the thing is that when you are working on multi-shop, since you are, it's not really clear from a user standpoint in which shop context you are. Sometimes you make unintended changes because the UX is confusing. So we want to improve that so that you will avoid making changes that you don't mean to do, and that you can be confident when you're working with this feature activated. We are going to work on bringing back some features that were lost after migration. Some migrated pages lost multi-shop functionality when we migrated them, so we are going to bring that back. And as I said before, we're going to fix some old bugs while we're at it. For example, in modules, some native modules don't work very well in multi-shop context, so we're going to work on that. So let's see how it will look like. So these are some mockups that we're working on for 178. As you can see at the top bar now, we are going to have this color bar, that is going to change colors depending on what context you are. So if you don't know how it looks like, and right now when you're on multi-shop, you have a drop-down menu that you can select if your changes are going to be applied to all your shops or to just one in particular. So how does this work? You have this bar at the top, and you have a drop-down menu, and when you click on it, you see all your shops, which can be grouped, just as they can be grouped right now. And when you click on a specific shop, you go to the context of that specific shop. And when you are in the context of a specific shop, you have this checkbox on the left. And as you can see, when you don't check a checkbox, the fields are grayed out, they are disabled. So you have to click on the checkbox to enable that field and to apply a specific configuration for this specific shop. And also you can see that you're in a shop because the color of the bar is different than when you're on another shop or on the all shops context. So let's go back to the all shop context. There's another feature that we're going to add, and this is new for 177, is this thing here. So when you're on the all shop context, many people were struggling because they didn't know if the value of the field in question, for example, this enable shop, was customized on one specific shop. So you have when a field is customized, has a different value on a different shop. When you're on the all shops, you are going to be seeing this drop-down menu, and when you click on it, you can see a drop-down which shows you which shop has its value customized, which has a different value. So we're hoping that these UX improvements will help people use the multi-shop feature with much more confidence, so that when you go back to when you click on the element on the menu, you can go back to your shop context and you see that the enable shop is yes instead of the no, which we had in the all shops context. That's for multi-shop. Now let's talk about PHP 7.4 compatibility. Last year, we announced that we are going to end support for end-of-life PHP versions like 5.6, which is no longer supported by PHP, and that we were going to revise our PHP compatibility with each new minor PrestaShop release. So for 177, we are going to drop support for PHP 5.6 and start supporting PHP 7.3, which was the latest available version when we started working on this version, on this PrestaShop version. So this revised PHP compatibility is going to be updated, as I said, with each new minor version. So in 178, we're going to introduce PHP compatibility with PHP 7.4, and depending on the libraries that we use, if they drop compatibility with older PHP versions, if we are forced to drop PHP compatibility, older version compatibility, because the libraries don't support it anymore, we're going to drop it as well. The most important thing for us is to be able, is to make to allow people to run our PrestaShop with the latest available PHP version. So the old version compatibility will be adapted depending on what our libraries support. Next up is translations. So in 175, we started allowing modules to create modern controllers, so Symfony-based controllers. In 176, we introduced a new system so that modules could use the modern translation system, the Symfony-based translation system, while using the legacy dictionaries, the legacy files containing the wordings. And in 178, we're going to allow modules to use XLIF translation files, the same kind of files that we use in core and native modules. So what does this look like? So in 176, when you had a module, for example, a file called some file PHP in your module, when you call the trans method, for example, you wanted to translate this wording hello world, and this is the domain name for this wording, so the group name for this wording. This was sent to the new translation system, which went through a stack of translation sources like cache, user-defined core files, and then finally the module files. And as I said before, this still used the module translation files, the legacy dictionaries, which were PHP based and which were not that easy to work with when you were a translator. So this worked. So because it could still use the old translation dictionaries, which will translate "Hello World" into "Bonjour le monde" if we were speaking about French. And in 178, this is going to work differently. So instead of using the legacy dictionary files, which we're going to still keep for backwards compatibility, we're going to try first with XLF files, with the modern dictionaries. So the rest will still work the same as in 176. And after this feature is done, modules will work exactly the same as the core. They won't have a specific system anymore for their translation. And most importantly, you're going to be able to export it and distribute your translations with your module. And of course, we're going to continue migrating. We're going to migrate more pages like discounts, login, attributes, and features. And we are going to be working on simplifying rendering for all back office forms. Let me just add a little comment about this final feature for 178, simplified rendering for all back office forms. So one of the things that people are complaining about is that adding new fields in core controllers in Symfony mode is complicated in terms of you can easily add new form fields at the end of the form, or if you want to add them at a specific place in the form, it's complicated because you have to override the template for that form. So starting on 178, you won't have to do that anymore. You will just change the order of the elements in the form builder, and it's going to be rendered automatically. So let's talk about PrestaShop 179. As I said before, it's hopefully going to be the final 1.7 version. We're going to migrate the import page. We're going to upgrade the Symfony version because if I'm not mistaken, 3.4, the maintenance for Symfony 3.4 is going to end at the end of 2021, and we wouldn't want to release a final 1.7 version which based on such an old version of Symfony that it's not going to receive security fixes. So we are forced to upgrade. We will either upgrade to 4.4, which is the long-time support version for the 4.x branch of Symfony, or 5.4, which is due to be released not long before we end working on this version. So I'm not quite sure if we're going to make it for 5.4. Either way, we're going to have to upgrade Symfony. And finally, we will remove Smarty-based legacy layout in Symfony pages, because right now, because of the way the Symfony migration was started in 2016, the Symfony-based controllers are actually embedded in a Smarty layout, which is handled by legacy code. And we wouldn't want to keep Symfony pages working on a legacy container. We will rather do it the opposite, so that to make legacy pages run in a Symfony container, because in 1.7.9 most pages will be Symfony based. And that's it for 179. So the question is, what's next after 179? Well, last year I wrote a series of blog posts in the build blog, our development blog. A 3-part series. Actually, it's a 4th part, but the 4th I haven't got around to writing it. But I promise that I will do it in the following months. So it's a series about where we are, where we are going, and how we will get there. So the first part, I described the current architecture of PrestaShop. Then in the second part, I analyzed what the pain points are with this architecture. So what are the problems with the current architecture? And in the third part, I I wrote about an idea for the future architecture. And as I said in the post, this is not a milestone; it's a voyage, if you will. It's a long-term vision of what I would like PrestaShop to be, and that will drive our decisions in terms of what we're going to do next. And the fourth part, which I didn't get time to write, but I have it in my head, is how we are going to get there. So, as I said, our objective is to get from the current architecture to the future architecture. So the current architecture is complex because it has multiple different stacks in the back office. You have the legacy stack and the new stack based on Symfony. Even in the new stack, you have a Vue.js part and a classic HTML-based stack. You have multiple APIs. The back office API, which only serves some pages on the back office, then the web services, which is based on the legacy stack and on which third parties rely. The core business, which has extension points everywhere, and everyone is going to is tapping directly into the core and modifying the core and putting the core in an inconsistent state. There are plenty of lines going everywhere all the time. So as you can see, it's quite complex. And the idea is to get to an architecture which is going to be much more decoupled, and where the core is going to be much more, I shouldn't say closed for modifications, closed for direct access, but with an API which is going to provide everything that you know, and that you need to do whatever you need to do. So this is an API, which is a contract. It states all the things that you can do. The core is going to use it itself for its internal task. The idea is to keep the core closed in terms of access, not in terms of open source. It's going to always remain open in that respect. It's just we're going to try and keep people from using it directly so that it can evolve independently from its interface. This interface is the thing that people rely on. This should never change, so that everything that depends on it can keep depending on it, even if the core, the way the core works changes in time. The idea is to have also front office APIs and administration APIs, so that you can control, for example, your catalog. You can control it either from the back office interface or from a third-party service like an ERP, and having the same thing on the front office. So you can have a classic front office like we have right now, so the one which is bundled with PrestaShop based on themes, etc. Or you could use another thing. You could use PrestaShop as a headless service and just plug another thing which will query it, for example, a mobile app, or kind of a physical vending machine, for example, or whatever you can dream of. And the idea is also to provide SDKs so that people can write modules based on already existing components which don't belong to the core, and which can remain stable over time. So this is an idea. It's not very, very detailed. The details will come when we start working on them. So as I said before, this is a vision. It's not a milestone. We're not going to say, oh yeah, in PrestaShop in the next version or in version XYZ, this is going to work like this. This is a vision. It takes a lot of time. Rebuilding stuff takes a lot of time. And people need features as well. So we can't just do refactoring all our lives. We have to do more than that. We learn from our past mistakes, so we don't want to do it in one step. We are going to take it one step at a time and progressively move towards this architecture. But big changes can only be performed on major releases because of backwards compatibility. So our plans is in the future to release one major version every 1 or 2 years, which includes major changes which are predictable, because we're going to speak about them in advance, and you all know about them before they are done. And small, real minor versions every 6 months, which will only provide new features and fix bugs, as we do right now. But the idea is to separate breaking changes into big major releases, which are issued more often than we are doing it right now, but not that often. And a continuous stream of minor versions that really ensure backward compatibility in the scope of that major version in a steady pace. This is what I'd like us to do, and I hope we're going to be able to do it. So what's next? Next is PrestaShop 8. So the first thing that I would like to say is that why not 1.8? Because the 1 doesn't mean anything. Let's just accept it. 1.5 was a major version, 1.6 was a major version, 1.7 is a major version, so let's just drop the 1 and follow the good practices of Semver, which is major.minor.patch. So like many other projects that went before us, we're just going to drop the 1 and keep the second part for the major. So the next major of PrestaShop will most likely be called PrestaShop 8. And we have some ideas of what we would like to do with it. So for example, we would like to remove Smarty and use only Twig everywhere, which is a sane choice. Replace legacy controllers with Symfony controllers in front office and get rid of what's left of legacy controllers. Remove object model and replace it with Doctrine, which is the most used alternative, the most popular alternative. Everyone is using it, so why not us? And get rid of object model means rewriting web services, because it's closely tied to object models. And while we're at it, why not make it Symfony based and controller based so that you can do extensions on it? So these are some of the ideas that we are currently thinking on for the next major. We don't have a release date for that. I think that it's going to be probably in 2022, because we have to still work on 1.7.8 and 1.7.9, and working on these features will take a while. There are many more things that we could do. Some of these, maybe we won't do them on PrestaShop 8, they will be done on PrestaShop 9. We don't know yet, but there are some ideas that we are thinking of. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope that you find some you found some insights in what I said, and you feel excited about the future of PrestaShop. Now let's see if we have some questions.
Hello, Pablo. Great. Thank you for the presentation. I think they're all excited about your presentation because I can see many positive comments, especially about the last slide about PrestaShop 8. So everyone likes the points you presented. Well, I have a question for you coming from Michael. So, hi, Pablo. Can we have any insight about the upgrade of Symfony? We still have Symfony 3 LTS, which is soon to be deprecated, and Symfony 5 is pretty stable by now.
Yes, so I said that before, for 1.7.9, we're going to upgrade Symfony to either 4.4, which is the current LTS version, or 5.4, which hasn't been released yet. We have two options there. We can either choose to start 1.7.9 by migrating to Symfony 5, whatever version that is available at a time, and waiting for 5.4 to be released and upgrade to that afterwards. Or we can just go to 4.4. The thing is that since there are two major versions between 3 and 5, it's probably going to be much easier to migrate to 4 while not breaking everything in terms of the current, for example, the file structure is not the same. This could cause a lot of problems if we did it on a minor version. So my take is that we are probably going to go with 4.4 and then go to Symfony 5 for the next major.
Right. Thank you so much. Then we have a sort of a conversation on the chat box. Can you hear me? Yeah. About Twig and about the front office. And Christian was saying, I don't think you see Twig in 1.7. It's more likely to happen in the future. Maybe Pablo will talk about it.
Yeah, that's what I said. So probably this is going to happen in PrestaShop 8. So I'm talking about having a Twig-based front office.
Great. Well, it's okay. I don't know if there are any questions yet. Okay, so great. Thank you so much, Pablo, for this interesting presentation. It was a pleasure to have you here, and thank you to all our attendees. Actually, it was really good to see you and to see all your interactions about the Pablo presentation. Well, don't forget, stay tuned because we have another interesting webinar at 4 p.m. Paris time, Best Tips to Choose Your Payment Solution by Alexandre Darmon from PrestaShop. So thank you so much and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, people. Bye-bye.